Hey. Thank you for coming back to watch another one of my videos. Now today I would like to discuss a magazine article from a magazine called Evie. Now Evie is a feminine magazine. I don't think it would be fair to call them a feminist magazine, because if you go over to their About section, they say they want to cover women's issues without being overly political or overly trashy. And sadly, that means you can't be part of the feminist movement anymore. The article is 10 months old at time of recording. So you might be thinking, why am I, a male, trying to discuss a 10-month-old article from a magazine about women's issues? Well, first of all, I like to try to stay up to date on women's issues. I am a father to daughters, a son of a mother. I'm a son of a lot of things, but among those, I am the son of a mother. And as a heterosexual male, I would like to date females. Now, I know the chances of that happening. I know. But, a boy can dream. So why a 10-month-old article? Well, believe it or not, this actually ties in with one thing that I've gone on and on about on some of my live streams. If you ever want to feel better about your life, watch some of my drunken attempts at playing video games while rambling on incoherently. That's what my live streams are. Yeah, I know. Now, this article is written by the lovely and talented Chen. And yes, that Chen. If you're not sure who that is, Chen is the decidedly not white person that Hunter Avalon and his wife are berating on Twitter, claiming she is a neo-Nazi, white separatist, and she hates brown people and all kinds of just... Why? I would like to think that Hunter just knows we all need someone to laugh at in these troubling times. Or he is legitimately that stupid. But hopefully it's the making us all laugh thing. Now this is an article about sex workers. Tough subject, but why don't we dig right into it? So, the case for intervention is the first thing that the article goes over. People argue that legalization will lead to increased sex traffic. That's wrong. That's very wrong. How do we know? Well, look at the war on drugs. Making drugs illegal absolutely stopped the flow of drugs into the country, right? No. It did not even slow drugs coming into the country, and it prevented the ability to tax it, and it prevented the ability to regulate it and make it safer. Let's look at the 1920s and Prohibition. All that did was create speakeasies and give power to organized crime. Now, the legalization of sex work would not only decrease the ability of people to traffic, it would also bring in regulation. It would raise money with taxes that could help with the testing and the increased safety of the sex workers. Right now, a sex worker calling the authorities because she's being abused is about as common sense as someone working in a meth lab calling OSHA for unsafe work practices. It's an asinine argument. Truthfully, the only argument you can legitimately make is morals. It's morally reprehensible, it's against morals, it's bad, blah, blah, blah. That's it. That's the only argument you have. Now, I'm not saying you can't make that argument. I'm not saying you shouldn't make that argument. I'm saying the increased sex trafficking, making it less safe for people, that's dumb. That's wrong. And I think most of you know that. So Lauren asks, why aren't we discussing whether people should participate in sex work, even if legalization does occur? Now, to be honest, that's a fantastic question. Now again, whether you should or should not has no bearing on legality. You should not eat so much bacon. You should not ride a motorcycle without a helmet. You should not drive a car without wearing a seatbelt. But consenting adults are given life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, yeah. Should you do it? Well, you'd have to look into the reasons for and the reasons against. But consenting adults have the freedom to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's kind of in our Constitution, you know? Now, anyone familiar with pornographic movies from the 1980s may be familiar with the name Linda Lovelace. Now, in the 70s, she had been forced into the adult industry by an abusive husband, against her will. Now, her fellow sex workers helped her escape the abuse and helped protect her from the abuser. And she didn't really want to be there, but she regretted her time in the industry. So in the 80s, she attacked the adult industry, and she made a lot of very unfair attacks against an industry that she did not want to be part of, that did ultimately help her. Now, there were some fair complaints, but overall, she was really lashing out at the business as opposed to her abuser. Now, sex work, in a lot of ways, reminds me of over-the-road truck driving, long-haul truck driving. There are some unique emotional difficulties that come along with the job. And whether you should or should not do the job is and should be always your choice and no one else's. And that includes the government. So what are the positives to sex work? Well, the most obvious one would be money. It's supposed to pay pretty good. Another thing, now, it's been a while, but I vaguely remember that sex was enjoyable. Pretty sure it was. I know it's been a long time. I'm a winner. The hours are supposed to be pretty good. I mean, you're not working overtime in a factory. And this is unique to our generation, but sex work is touted in many circles as standing up to the patriarchy and feminine strength, a matter of pride, power. And all of those sound awesome. But they're also all very subjective. The money. Mia Khalifa spent 3 months in the business. Became the biggest star there is. But she left without signing some huge, many digits contract. She left the business. Went on to do sports. So she didn't make much money at all for herself. She made other people very, very rich. And as for the enjoyment, well, moral guilt can erode any pleasure or enjoyment. And the same goes for your pride and your emotional strength at proving it's your body. Having guilt and regret can nullify all of those. And as far as the hours go, working part-time at a job you hate, that makes you hate yourself, can be so much worse than working overtime at a job you truly enjoy, that makes you feel fulfilled and happy. So yeah, there are some real positives, but it's subjective. Those positives may not be positive for you. That's why it's the individual's choice, no one else's. Mental health is a very important thing to discuss here. Nearly half of all sex workers in Canada are suffering from mental health difficulties. Whereas outside of the sex industry, it's barely 15%. Now, how much is caused by the work itself? And how much of it is people who have these issues are drawn to that industry? There is clearly a link between mental health issues and sex work. Now, I brought up truck driving before. And, well, long-haul drivers are exposed to loneliness, insomnia, and stress from time constraints. Not to mention the paranoia from all the terrible drivers that are just around you all the time. I mean, you're in a Prius and you're going to try to force me to change lanes? I'm in an international... The mental health issues among truck drivers are comparable, according to the National Center for Biotechnology Information. Also, a lot of veterans are drawn to truck driving. And a lot of veterans do have mental health issues. So how much is from the job and how much is the job attracts people like that? I just think the arguments of using mental health to try to outlaw sex work, you'd have to outlaw truck driving as well. Blair White has discussed people trying to pressure her into doing sex work. And I already mentioned before Linda Lovelace. One person's journey is not everyone's journey. And there are positives and there are negatives. But if the choice is made for someone, if they're pushed into something that they don't want, then the experience is more likely going to be damaging. Emily Eveland, she wrote about sex work and how damaging it was. And let me pull it up. The hands that typed out Craigslist ads, the legs that spread in strangers' cars, and the mouth that took in wrinkled flesh. Those things weren't mine. They belonged to my past. They belonged to the part of me that still felt voiceless, choiceless, and desperate for something resembling love for men who had none to offer. My freedom was a facade. I hated myself. I hated the warm PBRs and the cheap tequila shots and the grape-flavored blunts. I hated the fat men who grunted when they fucked. I hated Professor Mike and the man in the white truck. I hated blowjobs and anal beads and high heels and my bruised body. I know reading that's absolutely going to take away any chance of monetization. But I really, really hate that she went through that. It is important that she shares her experience. Just as it's important for everyone to remember that her journey is hers and no one else's. Don't shame people who make the choice and enjoy it. And don't shame those that lived the life and hated it. Putting women first always. The issue of sex work is not an easy problem to solve. Legalized or not, it's an industry rife with abuse, trafficking, drugs, and mental illness. And while these and other issues may be enough to caution anyone from participating in or pursuing sex work, it's important to note that whatever our positions on the subject may be, they should always have the common goal of making women's lives better. Words of caution against the sex industry often come from a place of judgment, rather than care and understanding. Those of us who are critical of sex work must realize that helping women see the dangers of sex work and equipping them with better opportunities will ultimately go further to both dissuade and protect them from simply trying to shame them. Now, those are Lauren's words, not mine. But I read them because I completely agree with the sentiment. Whether you are persuading or dissuading someone from a career choice. Truck driving as an example. You can warn someone about all the issues that they couldn't face, or you can praise all the freedom and positives of the job. There's not that much shaming going on with driving an 18-wheeler. And trying to slut shame someone usually doesn't endear them to you. So, share your experiences if you have them, the good and the bad. But don't take away someone's choice, and don't shame them for making their choice, even if you disagree with it. Give advice, give help, or move the fuck on. Don't shame people, and don't take away their choices. Thank you so very much for taking the time to watch this video. I know it's not the easiest subject to go over, and while I am very concrete and very clear on my feelings when it comes to legalization, I am very open to the difficulties and the problems with the industry. And my heart goes out to everyone out there who is suffering. So if you or someone you know needs help, I have some hotlines for you to call. The sexual assault hotline is 1-800-656-HOPE. For domestic violence, the Safe Horizon hotline, which does include shelters, is 1-800-621-HOPE. If you are receiving hate or violence for being LGBT, 212-714-1141. For suicide assistance, call the Samaritan hotline, 212-673-3000, and any other issues that may arise from the sex industry. Call the LifeNet hotline at 800-543-3638. Regardless of your feelings on the industry, don't shame those who are in it. Either help or ignore. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a safe and happy evening.